was the sweetest, most mysterious-looking place anyone could imagine. The high walls, which shut it in, were covered with the leafless stems of climbing roses, which were so thick that they matted together. Mary Lennox knew they were roses, because she'd seen a great many roses in India. All the ground was covered with a grass of wintry brown, and out of it grew clumps of bushes, which were surely rose bushes, if they were alive. There were a number of standard roses, which had so spread their branches that they were like little trees. There were other trees in the garden, and one of the things which made the place look strangest and loveliest was that the climbing roses had run all over them, and swung down long tendrils which made light swaying curtains, and here and there they had caught at each other, or at a far-reaching branch, and had crept from one tree to another, and made lovely bridges of themselves. There were neither leaves nor roses on them now, and Mary did not know whether they were dead or alive, but their thin green or brown branches and sprays looked like a sort of hazy mantle spreading over everything, walls and trees and even brown grass, where they had fallen from. It was this hazy tangle from tree to tree which made it look so mysterious. Mary had thought it must be different from other gardens which had not been left by themselves for so long, and indeed it was different from any place she had ever seen in her life. How still it is! How still! Then she waited a moment and listened to the stillness. The robin who had flown to his tree-top was still as all the rest. He did not even flutter his wings. He sat without stirring and looked at Mary. No wonder it is still. I am the first person who has spoken in here for 10 years. She moved away from the door, stepping as softly as if she were afraid of awakening someone. She was glad that there was grass under her feet, and that her steps made no sounds. She walked under one of the fairy-like arches between the trees, and looked up at the sprays and tendrils which formed them. I wonder if they are all quite dead. Is it all a quite dead garden? I wish it wasn't. If she'd been Ben Weatherstaff, she could have told whether the wood was alive by looking at it. But she could only see that there were grey or brown sprays and branches, and none showed any signs of life, not even a tiny leaf bud anywhere. But she was inside the wonderful garden, and she could come through that door under the ivy any time, and she felt as if she had found a world all her own. The sun was shining inside the 4 walls, and the high arch of blue sky over this particular piece of Misselthwaite seemed even more brilliant and soft than it was over the moor. The robin flew down from his tree-top and hopped about or flew after her from one bush to another. He chirped a good deal, and had a very busy air, as if he were showing her things. Everything was strange and silent, and she seemed to be hundreds of miles away from anyone. But somehow she did not feel lonely at all. All that troubled her was her wish that she knew whether all the roses were dead, or if perhaps some of them had lived, and might put out leaves and buds as the weather got warmer. She did not want it to be a quite dead garden. If it were a quite alive garden, how wonderful it would be, and what thousands of roses would grow on every side. A skipping rope had hung over her arm when she came in, and after she had walked about for a while, she thought she would skip around the whole garden, stopping when she wanted to look at things. There seemed to have been grass paths here and there, and in 1 or 2 corners there were alcoves of evergreen with stone seats. There seemed to have been grass paths here and there, and in 1 or 2 corners there were alcoves of evergreen with stone seats, or all moss-covered urns in them. As she came near the second of these alcoves, she stopped skipping. There had once been a flower-bed in it, and she thought she saw something sticking out of the black earth, some sharp little pale green points. She remembered what Ben Weatherstaff had said, and she knelt down to look at them. Yes, they are tiny growing things, and they might be crocuses, or snowdrops, or daffodils. She bent very close and sniffed the fresh scent of damp earth. She liked it very much. Perhaps there are some other ones coming up in other places. I will go all over the garden and look. She did not skip, but walked. She went slowly and kept her eyes on the ground. She looked in the old border beds and among the grass, and after she had gone round, trying to miss nothing, she had found ever so many more sharp, pale green points, and she had become quite excited again. It isn't a dead garden. Even if the roses are dead, there are other things alive. She did not know anything about gardening, but the grass seemed so thick in some of the places where the green points were pushing their way through that she thought they did not seem to have enough room to grow. She searched about until she found a rather sharp piece of wood, and knelt down and dug and weeded out the weeds and grass until she made nice clear little patches around them. Now they look as if they could breathe. I'm going to do ever so many more. I'll do all I can see. If I haven't time today, I can come tomorrow. She went from place to place, and dug and weeded, and enjoyed herself so immensely that she was led on from bed to bed and into the grass under the trees. The exercise made her so warm that she first threw her coat off, and then her hat, and without knowing it she was smiling down onto the grass and the pale green points all the time. The robin was tremendously busy. He was very much pleased to see gardening begun on his own estate. He had often wondered at Ben Weatherstaff. Where gardening is done, all sorts of delightful things to eat are turned up with the soil. Now here was this new kind of creature who had not half Ben's size, and yet had the sense to come into his garden and begin at once. Mistress Mary worked in her garden until it was time to go to midday dinner. In fact, she was rather late in remembering, and when she put on her coat and hat and picked up her skipping rope, she could not believe that she had been working 2 or 3 hours. She had been actually happy all the time, and dozens of the tiny pale green points were to be seen in cleared places, looking twice as cheerful as they had looked before, when the grass and weeds had been smothering them. "I shall come back this afternoon," she said, looking all round at her new kingdom, and speaking to the trees and rose bushes as if they heard her. Then she ran lightly across the grass, pushed open the slow old door, and slipped through it under the ivy. She had such red cheeks and such bright eyes, and ate such a dinner, that Martha was delighted. 2 pieces of meat, and 2 helps of rice pudding? Mother will be pleased when I tell her what that skipping rope's done for thee." In the course of her digging with her pointed stick, Mistress Mary had found herself digging up a sort of white root, rather like an onion. She'd put it back in its place and patted the earth carefully down on it, and just now she wondered if Martha might be able to tell her what it was. "Martha, what are those white roots that look like onions?" "They're bulbs. Lots of spring flowers grow from them. The very little ones are snowdrops and crocuses. The big ones are narcissus and jonquils and daffodillies. The biggest of all is lilies and purple flags. They're nice. Dickon's got a whole lot of them planted in our bit of garden." "Does Dickon know all about them?" asked Mary, a new idea taking possession of her. "Our Dickon can make a flower grow out of a brick wall. Mother says he just whispers things out of the ground." "Do bulbs live a long time? Would they live years and years if no one helped them?" "Well, they're things as helps themselves. That's why poor folk can afford to have them. If you don't trouble 'em, most of 'em will work away underground for a lifetime, and spread out and have little uns. There's a place in the park woods here where there's snowdrops by the 1,000, and they're the prettiest sight in Yorkshire when the spring comes. Nobody knows when they were first planted. I wish the spring were here now. I want to see all the things that grow in England. I wish I had a little spade." "Whatever does thou want a spade for? Aren't they going to take to digging? I must tell Mother that too." Mary looked at the fire and pondered a little. She must be careful if she meant to keep her secret kingdom. She wasn't doing any harm, but if Mr. Craven found out about the open door, he would be fearfully angry and get a new key and lock it up for evermore. She really could not bear that. "This is such a big, lonely place. The house is lonely, and the park is lonely, and the gardens are lonely. So many places seem shut up. I never did many things in India, but there were more people to look at, natives and soldiers marching by, and sometimes bands playing, and my ayah told me stories. But there's no one here to talk to me except you and Ben Weatherstaff, and you have to do your work, and Ben Weatherstaff won't speak to me often. I thought if I had a little spade, I could dig somewhere as he does, and I might make a little garden, if he could give me some seeds." "Well, there now. If that wasn't one of the things Mother said. She says there's such a lot of room in that big place, why don't they give her a bit of it for herself, even if she doesn't plant nothing but parsley and radishes? She'd dig and rake away and be right down happy over it. That were the very words she said." "Were they? How many things she knows, doesn't she?" "Aye, yes. It's like she says, A woman that brings up 12 children learns somewhat besides ABC. Children's as good as arithmetic to set you finding out things. How much would a spade cost? A little one? Well, at Thwaite Village there's a shop or so, and I saw a little garden sets of a spade and rake and a fork, all tied together for 2 shillings. They looked stout enough to work with, too. I've got more than that in my purse. Mrs. Morrison gave me 5 shillings, and Mrs. Medlock gave me some money from Mr. Craven. Oh, did he remember thee that much? Mrs. Medlock said I was to have a shilling every week to spend. She gives me one every Saturday. I don't know what to spend it on. My word, that's riches. Well, that can buy anything in the world I wants. The rent of our cottage is only 1 and 3pence, and it's like pulling our teeth to get it. Now, I've just thought of something. What? In the shop at Thwaite they sell packages of flower seeds for a penny each, and our Dickon, he knows which is the prettiest ones and how to make 'em grow. He walks over to Thwaite many a day, just for fun of it. Dost thou know how to print letters? I know how to write. Well, our Dickon can only read printing. If they could print, we could write a letter to him and ask him to go and buy the garden tools and the seeds at the same time. Oh, you're a good girl. You are really. I didn't know you were so nice. I know I can print letters, if I try. Let's ask Mrs. Medlock for some pen and ink and paper. Well, I've got some of my own. I bought 'em so I could print a bit of letter to Mother of a Sunday. I'll go and get it. She ran out of the room, and Mary stood by the fire and twisted her thin little hands together with sheer pleasure. If I had a spade, I could make the earth nice and soft and dig up weeds. If I have seeds and can make flowers grow, the garden won't be dead at all. It'll become alive. It will come alive. She did not go out again that afternoon, because when Martha returned with her pen and ink and paper, she was obliged to clear the table and carry the plates and dishes downstairs. And when she got into the kitchen, Mrs. Medlock was there and told her to do something. So Mary waited for her for what seemed a very long time before she came back. Then it was a serious piece of work to write to Dickon. Mary had been taught very little, because her governesses had disliked her too much to stay with her. She could not spell particularly well, but she found that she could print letters when she tried. This was the letter Martha dictated to her. My dear Dickon, this comes hoping to find you well as it leaves me at present. Miss Mary has plenty of money, and will you go to Thwaite and buy her some flower seeds and a set of garden tools to make a flower bed? Pick the prettiest ones and easy to grow, because she has never done it before and lived in India, which is different. Give my love to Mother and every one of you. Miss Mary is going to tell me a lot more, so that on my day out you can hear about elephants and camels, and gentlemen going hunting lions and tigers. That's right. Now put your loving sister, Martha Thebe Sowerby. Right. Then we'll put the money in the envelope, and I'll get the butcher's boy to take it in his cart. He's a great friend of Dickon's. How shall I get the things when Dickon buys them? Oh, he'll bring them to you himself. He'd like a walk over this way. Oh, then I shall see him. I never thought I'd see Dickon. Does thou want to see him? Yes, I do. I never saw a boy foxes and crows loved. I want to see him very much. Well. Oh, now to think of me forgetting. I thought I was going to tell you the first thing this morning. I asked Mother, and she said she'd ask Mrs. Medlock her own self. Do you mean what I said Tuesday? Ask her if you might be driven over to our cottage some day and have a bit of Mother's hot oat cake and butter and a glass of milk. It seemed as if all the interesting things were happening in one day. To think of going over the moor in the daylight and when the sky was blue. To think of going into the cottage which held 12 children. Does she think Mrs. Medlock would let me go? Aye, she thinks she would. She knows what a tidy woman Mother is, and how clean she keeps the cottage. If I went, I should see your mother as well as Dickon. Mary thought it over, liking the idea very much. She doesn't seem at all like the mothers in India. Her work in the garden and the excitement of the afternoon ended by making her feel quiet and thoughtful. Martha stayed with her until tea-time, but they sat in comfortable quiet and talked very little. But just before Martha went downstairs for a tea-tray, Mary asked a question. Martha, has the scullery maid had toothache again today? Martha certainly started slightly. What makes thee ask that? because when I waited so long for you to come back, I opened the door and walked down the corridor to see if you were coming, and I heard that far-off crying again, just as we heard it the other night. There isn't a wind today, so you see it couldn't have been the wind. Eh... Oh, thou mustn't go walking around in corridors and listening. Mr. Craven would be that angry there's no knowing what he'd do. I wasn't listening. I was just waiting for you, and I heard it. That's 3 times. My word, that's Mrs. Medlock's bell. Martha almost ran from the room. It's the strangest house anyone ever lived in, said Mary drowsily, as she dropped her head on the cushioned seat of the armchair near her. Fresh air and digging and skipping rope had made her feel so comfortably tired that she fell asleep. The sun shone down for nearly a week on the secret garden. The secret garden was what Mary called it when she was thinking of it. She liked the name, and she liked still more the feeling that when its beautiful old walls shut her in, no one knew where she was. It seemed almost like being shut out of a world in some fairy place. The few books she had read and liked had been fairy stories, and she had read of secret gardens in some of the stories. Sometimes people went to sleep in them for 100 years, which she had thought must be rather stupid, for she had no intention of going to sleep, and in fact she was becoming wider awake every day which passed at Misselthwaite. She was beginning to like being out of doors. She no longer hated the wind, but enjoyed it. She could run faster and longer, and she could skip up to 100. The bulbs in the secret garden must have been much astonished. Such nice clear spaces were made round them that they had all the breathing space they wanted, and really, if Mistress Mary had known it, they began to cheer up under the dark earth and work tremendously. The sun could get at them and warm them, and when the rain came down it could reach them at once, so they began to feel very much alive. Mary was an odd, determined little person, and now she had something interesting to be determined about. She was very much absorbed indeed. She worked and dug and pulled up weeds steadily, only becoming more pleased with her work every hour, instead of tiring of it. It seemed to her like a fascinating sort of play. She found many more of the sprouting pale green points than she had ever hoped to find. They seemed to be starting up everywhere, and each day she was sure she found new ones, some so tiny that they barely peeped above the earth. There were so many that she remembered what Martha had said about the snowdrops by the thousands, and about bulbs spreading and making new ones. These had been left to themselves for 10 years. Perhaps they had spread, like the snowdrops, into thousands. She wondered how long it would be before they showed that they were flowers. Sometimes she stopped digging to look at the garden and tried to imagine what it would be like when it was covered with thousands of lovely things in bloom. During that week of sunshine she became more intimate with Ben Weatherstaff. She surprised him several times by seeming to start up beside him as if she sprang out of the earth. The truth was that she was afraid that he would pick up his tools and go away if he saw her coming, so she always walked towards him as silently as possible. But, in fact, he did not object to her, not as strongly as he had at first. Perhaps he was secretly rather flattered by her evident desire for his elderly company. Then, also, she was more civil than she had been. He did not know that when she first saw him she spoke to him as she would have spoken to a native, and had not known that a cross, sturdy old Yorkshireman was not accustomed to salaam to his masters, and be merely commanded by them to do things. "That like that, Robin," he said to her one morning when he lifted his head and saw her standing by him. "I never knows when I'll see thee, or which side they'll come from." "He's friends with me now." "Oh, well, that's like him. Making up to women folk just for vanity and flightiness. There's nothing he wouldn't do for the sake of showing off and flirting his tail feathers. He's as full of pride as an egg's full of meat." He very seldom talked much, and sometimes did not even answer Mary's questions, except by a grunt. But this morning he had said more than usual. He stood up and rested one hobnailed boot on top of a spade, and looked her over. "How long's thou been here?" "I think it's about a month." "Oh, well, thou's beginning to do Misselthwaite credit. Thou's a bit fatter than thou was when they came, and not quite so yeller. Thou looked like a young plucked crow when thou first came into this garden. Thinks I to myself I never set eyes on an uglier, sourer-faced young'un." Mary was not vain, and she had never thought much of her looks, She was not greatly disturbed. "I know I'm fatter. My stockings are getting tighter. They used to make wrinkles. There's for Robin, Ben Weatherstaff." There indeed was for Robin, and she thought he looked nicer than ever. His red waistcoat was as glossy as satin, and he flirted his wings and tail and tilted his head and hopped about with all sorts of lively graces. He seemed determined to make Ben Weatherstaff admire him. But Ben was sarcastic. "Aye, there thou art. Thou can put up with me for a bit sometimes when there's got no one better. There's been reddening up thy waistcoat and polishing the feathers these 2 weeks. I know what's up with ye. Thou's courting some bold young madam somewhere, telling thy lies to her about being the finest cock robin on Misselth Moor and ready to fight all the rest of 'em." "Oh, look at him!" The robin was evidently in a fascinating, bold mood. He hopped closer and closer, and looked at Ben Weatherstaff more and more engagingly. He flew on to the nearest currant bush and tilted his head and sang a little song right at them. "Thou thinks thou'll get over me by doing that?" Ben wrinkled his face up in such a way that Mary felt quite sure he was trying not to look pleased. "Thou thinks no one can stand out against thee. That's what thou thinks." The robin spread his wings. Mary could scarcely believe her eyes. He flew right up to the handle of Ben Weatherstaff's spade and alighted on top of it. Then the old man's face wrinkled itself slowly into a new expression. He stood still, as if he were afraid to breathe, as if he would not have stirred for the world, lest his robin would start away. "Well, I'm danged. That does know how to get at a chap, that does. Oh, that's fair unearthly, that's so knowing." And he stood without stirring, almost without drawing his breath, until the robin gave a flirt to his wings and flew away. Then he stood looking at the handle of the spade as if there might be magic in it. And then he began to dig again, and said nothing for several minutes. But because he kept breaking into a slow grin now and then, Mary was not afraid to talk to him. "Have you a garden of your own?" "No, I'm a bachelor at lodge, with Martin at the gate." "If you had one, what would you plant?" "Cabbages and taters and onions." "But if you wanted to make a flower garden, what would you plant?" "Bulbs and sweet-smelling things, but mostly roses." "Do you like roses?" Well, yes, I do. I was learned that by a young lady I was gardener to. She had a lot in a place she was fond of, and she loved them like they were children, or robins. I've seen her bend over and kiss 'em." He dragged another weed out and scowled at it. "That was as much as 10 years ago." "Where is she now?" "Heaven." He drove his spade deeply into the soil. "According to what parson says." "What happened to the roses?" "They were left to themselves." "Did they quite die? Do roses quite die when they're left to themselves?" "Well, I'd got to like 'em, and I liked her, and she liked 'em. And so twice a year I go and work on 'em a bit, prune 'em and dig about the roots. They run wild, but they was rich in the soil, so some of 'em lived." "When they have no leaves, and look grey and brown and dry, how do you know if they're dead or alive?" "Well, you wait till the spring gets at 'em. Wait till the sun shines and the rain falls on the sunshine, and... well, then they'll find out." "How?" said Mary, quite forgetting to be careful. "How?" "Well, look along the twigs and branches, and if they sees a bit of a brown lump swelling here and there, watch it. Watch it after the warm rain and see what happens. Why does thou care so much about roses and such all of a sudden?" I want to play that I have a garden of my own. There's nothing for me to do. I have nothing, and no one." "Well, that's true. Thou hasn't." He said it in such an odd way, Mary wondered if he was actually a little sorry for her. She'd never felt sorry for herself. She'd only felt tired and cross, because she disliked people and things so much. But now the world seemed to be changing and getting nicer. If no one found out about the secret garden, she should enjoy herself always. She stayed with him for 10 or 15 minutes longer, and asked him as many questions as she dared. He answered every one of them in his queer grunting way, and he did not seem really cross, and did not pick up his spade and leave her. He said something about roses just as she was going away, and it reminded her of the ones he said he'd been fond of. "Do you go and see those other roses now?"
"No, not this year. Not mean this year. My rheumatics make me too stiff in joints."
He said it in his grumbling voice, and then quite suddenly he seemed to be angry, though she did not see quite why he should.
"Now look here, don't thou ask so many questions. Thou the worst wench for asking questions I've ever come across. Get thee gone and play, thee. I've done talking for today."
And he said it so crossly that she knew there was not the least use in staying another minute. She went skipping slowly down the outside wall, thinking him over and saying to herself that, queer as it was, here was another person whom she liked in spite of his crossness. She liked old Ben Weatherstaff. Yes, she did like him. She always wanted to try and make him talk to her. And she began to believe that he knew everything in the world about flowers. There was a laurel-hedged walk which curved around the secret garden, and ended at a gate which opened into the wood, into the park. She thought she should skip round this walk, and look into the wood, and see if there were any rabbits hopping about. She enjoyed the skipping very much, and when she reached the little gate she opened it and went through, because she heard a low, peculiar whistling, and she wanted to find out what it was. It was a very strange thing indeed. She quite caught her breath as she stopped to look at it. A boy was sitting under a tree with his back against it, playing on a rough wooden pipe. He was a funny-looking boy, about 12. He looked very clean, and his nose turned up, and his cheeks were as red as poppies. And never had Mistress Mary seen such round and such blue eyes as in the boy's face. And on the trunk of a tree he leaned against, a brown squirrel was clinging and watching him. And from behind a bush near by, a cock-pheasant was delicately stretching his neck to peep out. And quite near him were 2 rabbits sitting up and sniffing with tremulous noses. And actually it appeared as if they were all drawing near to watch him and listen to the strange, low little call his pipe seemed to make. When he saw Mary, he held up his hand and spoke to her in a voice almost as low as, and rather like, his piping.
"Don't thou move."
She remained motionless. He stopped playing and began to rise from the ground. He moved so slowly that it scarcely seemed as though he were moving at all, but at last he stood on his feet, and then the squirrel scampered back up into the branches of his tree. The pheasant withdrew his head, and the rabbit stopped on all fours and began to hop away, though not at all as if they were frightened.
"I'm Dickon. I know that, Miss Mary."
Then Mary realized that somehow she had known at first that he was Dickon. Who else would have been charming rabbits and pheasants as the natives charm snakes in India? He had a wide, red, curving mouth, and his smile spread all over his face.
"I got up slow because if thou makes a quick move, it startles them. A body has to move gentle and speak low when wild things is about."
He did not speak to her as if they had never seen each other before, but as if he knew her quite well. Mary knew nothing about boys, and she spoke to him a little stiffly, because she felt rather shy. "Did you get Martha's letter?" He nodded his curly rust-coloured head.
"That's why I came."
He stooped to pick up something which had been lying on the ground beside him when he piped.
"I've got the garden tools. There's a little spade and a rake and a fork and a hoe. They're good uns. There's a trowel too. A woman at the shop threw in a packet of white poppy and one of blue larkspur when I bought the other seeds."
"Will you show the seeds to me?"
She wished she could talk as he did. His speech was so quick and easy. It sounded as if he liked her and was not the least afraid that she would not like him, though he was only a common moor-boy, in patched clothes, with a funny face and a rough, rusty red head. As she came closer to him, she noticed that there was a clean, fresh scent of heather and grass and leaves about him, almost as if he were made of them. She liked it very much. And when she looked into his funny face with his red cheeks and round blue eyes, she forgot she had felt shy. "Let's sit on this log and look at them." They sat down, and he took a clumsy little brown paper package out of his coat pocket. He untied the string, and inside were ever so many neater and smaller packages, with a picture of a flower on each one. "There's a lot of mignonet and poppies. Mignonet's the sweetest smelling thing as grows, and it'll grow wherever you cast it, same as poppies will. Them as'll come up and bloom if you just whistle at 'em. Them's the nicest of all. Where's that robin as is calling us?" The chirp came from a thick holly bush bright with scarlet berries. Mary thought she knew whose it was. "Is it really calling us?" "Aye, he's calling someone he's friends with. That's same as saying, 'Here I am, look at me, I want a bit of a chat.' There he is in that bush. Whose is he?" "He's Ben Weatherstaff's, but I think he knows me a little." "Ah, he knows thee, and he likes thee. He's took thee on. He'll tell me all about thee in a minute." He moved quite close to the bush with a slow movement Mary had noticed before, and then he made a sound almost like the robin's own twitter. The robin listened a few seconds intently, and then answered quite as if he were replying to a question. "Aye, he's a friend of yours."
"Do you think he is? Do you think he really likes me?"
"He wouldn't come as near as this if he didn't. Birds is rare choosers, and a robin can flout a body worse than a man. See, he's making up to thee now. Cannot thou see a chap? Cannot thou not see a chap, he's saying?" It really seemed to be true. He so sidled and twittered and tilted as he hopped on his bush.
"Do you understand everything birds say?"
Dickon's grin spread until it seemed all wide, red, curving mouth, and he rubbed his rough head. "I think I do, and they think I do. I've lived on the moor with 'em so long. I've watched 'em break shell, and come out and fledge, and learn to fly and begin to sing till I'm one with 'em. Sometimes I think perhaps I am a bird, or a fox, or a rabbit, or a squirrel, or even a beetle, and I don't know it." He laughed, and came back to the log and began to talk about the flower seeds again. He told her what they looked like when they were flowers. He told her how to plant them, and to watch them, and feed them, and water them. "Sit here. I'll plant them for thee myself. Where's the bit of garden?" Mary's thin hands clicked as they lay there on her lap. She did not know what to say, so for a whole minute she said nothing. She'd never thought of this. She felt miserable, and she felt as if she went red and then pale. "Thou has got a bit of garden, hasn't thou?" It was true. She turned red and then pale. Dickon saw her do it, and she still said nothing, and he began to be puzzled. "Wouldn't they give thee a bit? Hasn't thou got any yet?" She held her hands even tighter, and turned her eyes towards him. "I don't know anything about boys. Could you keep a secret if I told you one? It's a great secret. I don't know what I would do if someone found out. I believe I would die." "Well, I'm keeping secrets all the time. If I couldn't keep secrets from other lads, secrets about foxes' cubs and birds' nests and wild things' holes, there'd be naught safe on the moor. Aye, I can keep secrets." Mistress Mary did not mean to put out her hand and clutch his sleeve, but she did it. "I've stolen the garden. It isn't mine, it isn't anybody's. Nobody wants it. Nobody cares for it. Nobody ever goes into it. Perhaps everything in it is dead. I don't know." She began to feel hot and so contrary as she'd never been in her life. "I don't care. I don't care. Nobody has any right to take it from me when I care about it, and they don't. They're letting it die, all shut in by itself." She threw her arms about her face and burst out crying. Poor little Mistress Mary. "Eh!" He drew the exclamation out slowly. "I've nothing to do. Nothing belongs to me. I found it myself, and I got into it myself. I was only just like the robin, and they wouldn't take it from a robin." "Where is it?" Mistress Mary got up from the log at once. She knew she felt contrary again and obstinate, and she did not care at all. She was imperious and Indian, and at the same time hot and sorrowful. "Come with me. I'll show you." She led him round the laurel path and to the walk where the ivy grew so thickly. Dickon followed her with a queer, almost pitying look on his face. He felt as if he were being asked to look at some strange bird's nest and must move softly. When she stepped to the wall and lifted the hanging ivy, he started. There was a door, and Mary pushed it slowly open, and they passed in together. And then Mary stood and waved her hand around defiantly. "It's this. It's a secret garden, and I am the only one in the world who wants it to be alive." Dickon looked round and round about it, and round again. It is a queer, pretty place. It's like as if a body were in a dream."